What did your parents allow you to do as a kid that your friends were not allowed to do, and you now realize was bad parenting by your parents? Part 2. My mom caught me smoking a big spliff out of my bedroom window when I was 15. I don't remember the specifics, but she basically hinted she wanted me to buy her some weed. She was a bit of a hippie in the 60s. My mom was pretty chill with most things. Bought me my first drink, didn't believe in censorship, etc., but my favorite was Taco Day. Once every several weeks, my mom would come to wake me up, but instead of yelling at me to get ready for school, she'd say, "Screw it, it's Taco Day." We'd both go back to sleep for a bit, then put on comfy clothes, walk over to Taco Bell, order a dozen tacos each, then rent the worst movies we could find. Then we'd curl up in the living room and pig out on Taco Bell while riffing on the pathetic excuses for films MST3K style, till we couldn't stand it anymore. Those were some awesome days. That's awesome, and I don't really consider that bad parenting. I remember watching Pulp Fiction when I was about 5. Also, growing up watching Billy Connolly do stand-up was great. I knew back then that violence, swearing, and crude jokes were only allowed for adults and adult movies, so I wouldn't call it bad parenting. They knew I knew there was a line, and I wasn't allowed to cross it. I watched Saving Private Ryan and Platoon and The Dirty Dozen and all kinds of war and western movies with my mom from like ages 5+. I saw Saving Private Ryan probably at like 8. I watched Road Trip unrated with my mom and her friend when I was 10 or 11 max. She told me to look away when the girls had their tits out in the bathroom, but she didn't check to make sure I did. And her friend was just like, "Oh yeah, go ahead and look, beep. Isn't it great?" Let's see. We went out to eat every day. Every single day. I don't know how I stayed skinny through my childhood. Drinking was allowed because we're German. As a teenager, opposite-sex sleepovers at my house. My mother got me a fake ID when I was 14 or 15 so we could go bar hopping together. She honestly thought she was being responsible by holding onto it so I could only go out with her. Because we're German. Makes total sense. Drinking age in Germany is 16 for beer and wine, and if accompanied by parents, even earlier. Watch pretty much anything I wanted as long as I was quiet and didn't ask them to explain anything. Saw Rocky Horror Picture Show at 8 years of age. Lots of other stuff I did not understand till years later, but never asked about for fear of not being allowed to watch bad stuff anymore. Being a parent now myself, I'm far more strict. I'm okay with boobies, but nothing with like graphic sexual acts and no blood and guts. I remember a sleepover when I was about 8 or 9, and my friends and I were allowed to rent a scary movie. Seeing the cover for RHPC and not knowing anything about it, we made the obvious choice. Our little minds were blown, needless to say. Still one of my favorite movies, though. I was 13 the first time I got kicked out of my house. I was allowed to drive my truck around town when I was 15. They also didn't care that I smoked cigarettes and weed. Good times. I was allowed to smoke weed, but not cigarettes. I smoked cigarettes anyway, though. I don't smoke either anymore. My stepdad taught me a lot of craft skills that in hindsight must have breached every health and safety regulation in the book. If he taught you well, safely and correctly, it was fantastic parenting. Order my steaks well done. My girlfriend's mom always made sure she ordered her steaks well done because, to her, anything else was endangering her kids. She also cooked spaghetti well past al dente, and eggs until the white was a rubbery yellow ball. Life is very strange. I would eat things like pie or cookie dough or ice cream, etc. for entire meals, for days, because that would be all the entire grocery trip consisted of. I remember begging my mom for real food after like a week of only eating junk. And now I wonder why I struggle to control my sugar consumption. Well, being left alone for a month without parents is cool, especially when you're a teenager and you and your younger brother sell drugs to feed yourself. At least we had plenty of drugs to do. Also, the first time I shot a gun, I was 11. My little brother first shot a gun at 8. The gun thing doesn't seem that bad. I'm an Aussie city kid, and gun laws are still pretty tight, and I shot my first gun at 12, and my little brother at 9. As far as the Home Alone drugs thing, that's more worrying. I don't know about bad parenting, but they basically just trusted me to use my head. I would make crude chess pieces on the bandsaw unsupervised when I was 11, and at 14 I started making small explosives. It was fine. I'm still a teen, but I've been making s'more bombs for like 2 years. Well, my first video games were GTA 3 and Medal of Honor. I was a toddler. I still remember being 3 and walking into Best Buy to pick up Call of Duty 2 with my pops. Good days. Watch any movie that happened to be on TV. I'm not saying parents should aggressively censor their children's TV and movies, but I ended up watching a lot of messed up stuff that gave me terrible nightmares when I was pre-K. A little judgment about appropriateness would have been nice. Yeah, in my family, it was more like Hellraiser and the Chucky movies. According to my mom, I used to throw all the toys out of my crib at night. I wonder why. Not really bad parenting, but I grew up on a farm and learned to drive at like 10 years old. I started by driving a tractor on my dad's lap, learning to steer, and later on how to use the clutch and shift. By 14, I was driving the farm truck, late 80s manual Ford F-150, by myself, as well as doing actual jobs with the tractor. My parents were so mad when we got a new tractor on the farm that had a weight sensor in the seat, so my 12-year-old sister couldn't use it without strapping on an extra 20 pounds of weights. But yeah, learned to drive the tractor as soon as my feet could reach the pedals. Same with the truck. Ride a motorbike at 8 years old. We all rode motorbikes, 110 or 150cc, around the farms and back roads of our country town when we were in primary school. Rode Pee-wee 50s around the grandparents' property when we were about 6-ish. As long as we wore a helmet, no one cared. My dad had terminal cancer when I was growing up, so his way of spoiling me and my brother was to feed us whatever he wanted, so it became a ritual to get Taco Bell after school, every day. So this went on until he passed when I was in 3rd grade. My mom went on feeding the habit because she felt bad for us. Now, having struggled with weight issues most of my life, I look back on it and think I'm never going to feed my kid like that. Eat pizza rolls for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because I could cook them myself, and go to bed whenever I wanted. Eventually dropped out of school and was 300 pounds at one point. Children are idiots. You have to be the brains when they're young and tell them what to do. Mine didn't care. One of the things I'm so thankful for is that my mom taught me how to eat healthily, starting at a young age. She struggled with her weight, and rather than turning food into the enemy, she started making healthier portions. We always had veggies at every meal, and she taught portion control too. I'm sorry I had to go through that. It's tough to get back on track, especially when you're starting at 300 pounds. But it sounds like you're getting your life together, and that's something to be proud of. My mom would let me read whatever I want. I finished the entire Twilight series before I was in 7th grade. Once when I was at work with her, she told me I could borrow a book out of her coworker's desk. Of course, I picked up How to Marry a Millionaire Vampire, which was basically just vampire porn. After reading it, I told her it was dirty, and she just shrugged at me. You just triggered a memory of mine. I used to like going to thrift stores with my mom when I was a kid, and one time I got a few VHS tapes, including Revenge of the Nerds. My mom went to the bar to do bar things. I was like 11, and had told some people of the movie I was currently watching at home. She comes back and informs me that she was telling people the movie I watched, and her response to me telling her it was a college sex comedy was, oops. Lots of fast food. Supersize? Yes, please. Let's just say that if I were murdered right now, my chalk outline would be a circle. When I was about 8, my dad, Mom was gone, poured a shot of whiskey in a shot glass for me and my 3 siblings to try. We all tried it and screamed at how gross it was. He said something along the lines of, "And that's why you shouldn't ever drink it," while laughing at all of our reactions. There's no way I'm giving my kids liquor that young, but I don't drink liquor today, so maybe he was onto something. Nah, that's not really bad parenting. Everybody I know got a nip from a beer or something when they were around age 10, and we're all extremely grossed out by it. It's just so your kids don't always ask if they can drink it too or something. Just let them taste it, they hate it, they shut their mouth. My sister was 15 and convinced my mother to allow her to have a tattoo. She came into my room and said, "Your sister is getting a tattoo tomorrow. Would you like to have one as well?" To which I answered, "Yeah, sure." I was 14 at the time and wasn't thinking of getting a tattoo, but I thought that it would be awesome to be the only kid in my class to have one. I was 14 at the time. I have friends whose parents let them get a tattoo that young. To be fair, it wasn't an impulsive decision on my friends' parts, and they did discuss it properly with their parents, but I don't see the big deal unless you want someone on your face or equally as visible. My friends with parents like that are very close to their parents, and talk about everything because they know nothing is off limits, for discussion, at least. I was 15 or 16, and my boyfriend visited from out of state for the first time. He was 23 or 24. She left me alone with him for hours after we first met face to face in the apartment. Looking back, he could have killed, kidnapped, and or raped me. I ended up making macaroni and watching Lord of the Rings with him. We are engaged now. It's just what could have happened. It sounds awful, but I still believe socializing in a bar is more likely to get me raped and or killed than meeting someone from the internet, assuming you've known them for a bit. Much more likely to get scammed, I imagine. When I was 5, my mom would leave me alone with my 1-year-old younger sister. She worked, my big siblings went to school, and the neighbor came by once in a while to ask if we were okay, but only sometimes. My siblings came home at 2 or 3, so from 11 to 3 p.m., I was left in charge of a kid up until I used a small mirror as a plate to try and roast sunflowers in the microwave, and it caught fire, so I smacked it with a plastic spoon. Then that caught fire, but a smelly, smoky fire, not like a blaze. The neighbor ran, and since then, we had babysitters. Not to mention the time we got trapped in a room with no door handle, and me and my sister cried for an hour until we puked, then fell asleep from panic. Childcare in this country is just too expensive for a lot of people. She might have not had any other choice.